Hey everyone! Tonight, we're diving into some incredible true stories, from medieval peasants surviving brutal winters, to lost ancient cities, and revolutions that changed the world. If you enjoy deep dives into history's hidden moments, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what's next. I'd also love to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Let's see how far this community reaches. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights. Let's begin. The unforgiving cold. The desert was a black ocean under a spray of cold stars. In a bunker buried deep beneath Nevada sand, the air thrummed with a subsonic dread. Airman Leo Kowalski, strapped to a chair that felt like an autopsy table, watched his breath fog the sterile air. Dr. Eris Thorne observed from behind reinforced glass, his face a pale moon of conflicted intent. Project SPECTRA had no official existence. Its goal was the weaponization of consciousness itself. Not to break bodies, but to shatter collective will. Leo had volunteered. The bonus would save his family's farm. Now, as final readiness lights glowed amber, a primal terror coiled in his gut. The chamber sealed. A hydraulic sigh, then silence so deep it rang. Thorne's voice was a scratch through the speaker, initiating baseline resonance. A pulse began, felt in the bones. Then, light. Not illumination, but concept given form. It flooded his perception, painting directly onto his mind. Labyrinths without exit. Spirals of despair. A wave of loneliness, ancient and absolute, drowned him. He was the last sentient thing in a dead cosmos. Machines tracked the devastation. Brainwaves spiraled into chaos. Heart rate spiked then plummeted. Neuroempathetic link established, a technician stated flatly. Subject experiencing Category 5 existential dread. Thorne wiped his brow. Colonel Briggs, carved from granite and cynicism, stood immobile. Proceed to structural dissolution. Let's see what breaks first. The hum deepened. The light twisted into familiar shapes, his childhood home, now gnarled and weeping. Leo's mind, the target, was being systematically unspooled. Time lost all meaning. The assault was titled, Waves of Curated Horror, Terror, Sorrow, Guilt, crashed over him, followed by troughs of hollow numbness. In these deceptive calms, Spectra analyzed his neural responses, learning the architecture of his psyche, hunting for resonant frequencies of despair. It found his deepest regret, his friend Benny dying in Korea. The memory was ripped from him and amplified. He relived the mud, the screaming, the smell, but now layered with a crushing certainty. His cowardice killed Benny. The guilt was a stone in his chest. Yet, within the storm, a fragment of Leo's consciousness remained paradoxically alert. Shaped by Midwestern pragmatism and military radio training, it began detecting patterns. Emotional surges were preceded by minute shifts in the carrier wave, a slight frequency climb before terror, an amplitude dip before grief. His mind, under torturous pressure, began an involuntary analysis. He was mapping the machine's output. He was not just suffering, he was reverse engineering the torment. In the control room, Thorne observed the anomaly. Prefrontal cortex activity. It's engaging. He's processing this cognitively. Briggs grunted. A defense mechanism. It will collapse. Increase sensory load. Introduce kinesthetic phantoms. A new module activated. Leo felt searing cold, then insects crawling beneath his skin. His body arced against restraints. But the analytical part noted the correlation. Tactile illusions coincided with a harmonic spike at 1.8 kHz. Every horror had a signature. He was compiling a ledger of pain. In that ledger, a grim empowerment flickered. He was learning. And what could be learned, might one day be opposed. Dawn approached, a gray smear on external monitors. Inside the chamber, Leo existed in perpetual synthetic night. The machine cycled to social isolation amplification. Phantasmal figures surrounded him, family, squad mates, but they turned away, faces blurred, voices mocking whispers. The message was primal: you are alone, fundamentally and forever. This vector proved potent. Vital signs showed severe distress. Yet, the observer within him detected a flaw. The complex modulation created tiny inconsistencies in the base frequency, microgaps in the oppression. During these gaps, Leo's own untainted memories flashed: his mother's laugh, his dog's weight on his feet. They were ephemeral, but real. He began consciously focusing on these gaps, using them as anchors. He practiced a brutal meditation, anticipating the machine's rhythm, using the nanosecond of instability to insert a chosen memory. A sunflower field. Rain on dry soil. His reading stabilized slightly, not toward normalcy, but a strained plateau. Fascinating, Thorne muttered. He's developing a psychological immune response. Briggs's expression darkened. This is not therapy. Inject the critical failure scenario. The command input. Spectra accessed its most brutal subroutine, simulated mortality. Leo's perception dissolved into flashing images: his own funeral, his family grieving then forgetting, the farm sold, his name erased. A profound nihilism wrapped around him. Everything was meaningless. Resistance pointless. Leo's mind teetered on the edge of a vast dark ocean. He felt himself beginning to let go. But then, a spark. The farmer in him rebelled against meaninglessness. Life had weight. Purpose was built, season by season. This stubborn philosophy collided with the machine's void. A feedback loop of dissonance shivered through the system. A warning light blinked. Minor fluctuation in emitter stability, a technician reported. Briggs leaned forward. From the subject. Thorne read the data, eyes widening. His neural oscillation is briefly interfering with the output. Like two tuning forks too close together. For the first time, something other than clinical interest crossed Thorne's face. Fear. Or awe. The system alarm was a sharp electronic shriek. A power regulator failed, causing a cascade overload in the emitter's cooling array. Staged shutdown. Now, a technician yelled. Within the chamber, Leo experienced a seismic shift. The curated horrors vanished. In their place came a torrent of raw, unfiltered system data, diagnostic pulses, error codes, screaming electrical feedback, flooding his perception as sensory input. Pain as pure information. Yet, within this chaos, Leo's mind, trained to find signal in suffering, was presented with the machine's blueprint. He didn't understand it intellectually, but intuitively he saw it. The relationships between components, the feedback loops, the delicate balance of the carrier wave. It was a map, with a central vulnerability, the harmonic stabilizer. It required perfect sync with the subject's base resonance. His resonance was now in violent flux. He instinctively pushed back, a surge of raw identity, a concentrated burst of memory, and will focus through his newfound awareness. A psychic shout into the machine's open input. The effect was immediate. Monitors flared white. The main emitter whined then smoked. He's broadcasting back. Thorne exclaimed. Input buffers are overloading. Shut it down. Now. The emergency purge activated. Main lights died, replaced by red beacons. In the chamber, silence descended, thick and heavy. Leo slumped, trembling, his mind echoing with resonant aftershock. The door hissed open. Thorne rushed in, detachment gone. Leo? Can you hear me? Leo's eyes opened, holding a terrifying hyperlucid clarity. I saw the wires, he rasped. The wires in the world. Thorne knew the experiment had yielded something far more dangerous than a broken man. It had created a new kind of instrument. The infirmary was a stark white parenthesis. Leo lay monitored, his mind adrift. Physical effects were manageable: dehydration, neural fatigue. The psychological aftermath was uncharted. His senses were raw. Fluorescent light flicker was a strobing assault. A nurse's uniform rustle was sandpaper on his consciousness. More profoundly, he now perceived emotional substrates. It wasn't telepathy, it was empathy made literal and invasive. He felt the nurse's anxiety about a sick child as a gray pulsing ache. The medic's boredom was a flat beige haze. When Colonel Briggs entered, his presence was a cold sharp dagger of ambition. Leo flinched. "How's our patriot?" Briggs asked, tone devoid of warmth. Leo could only stare, overwhelmed. Thorne intervened. "He needs rest and evaluation." The feedback event left a persistent perceptual anomaly. Briggs ignored him, studying Leo like malfunctioning hardware. "The project is being reassessed. Your service is noted. You remain in custody for debriefing." The word custody hung thick. Over days, Thorne ran tests. Results were alarming. Leo's pineal gland showed unprecedented activity. His brain's default mode network was perpetually chaotically active, integrating external emotional stimuli as his own. He was a living antenna tuned to human emotion with no off switch. Thorne theorized the feedback permanently altered his neurobiology, creating a resonant bridge between his limbic system and ambient emotional fields. He was broadcasting a subtle field, but receiving was the dominant torturous mode. Leo begged for a cure. Thorne had none. He could only document the birth of a phenomenon. Willowbrook Manor was presented as a convalescence facility, a quiet place to heal. Nestled in Adirondack pine forests, it was a Victorian relic, its vast grounds enclosed by a high wrought iron fence obscured by trees. The journey was a blur. Upon arrival, the first thing Leo noticed was the silence, not absence of sound, but a damping of the emotional static that had plagued him. The land felt hushed, psychically insulated. His room overlooked a still dark lake. Staff were few, polite, emotionally muted. For the first night in months, Leo slept deeply. But upon waking, his adjusted perception revealed the truth. Willowbrook wasn't a sanctuary, it was a designed environment. Staff emotional dampness was trained biocontainment. The land's quiet was due to unique geology, schist deposits acting as psychic insulator. He was a specimen. His only genuine contact was Elias, the old groundskeeper who predated government acquisition. Elias spoke little, but his emotional signature was complex, deep-rooted connection to land and simmering resentment. One afternoon, watching Leo struggle by the lakeshore, Elias said, "You got a storm around you, son. Not in the sky. In the air." Leo turned startled. "You feel it?" Elias tapped his temple. "Not feel exactly. No. Like you know coming rain by ache in bones. This land, it swallows storms." This confirmation was both relief and sentence. He was perceptible. He was real. And he was trapped. Colonel Briggs arrived in an unmarked car, bringing Doctors Price and Vance. Their examination was cold, technical, focused on measuring output range and influence vector. They placed him in a shielded room, introduced calibrated emotional stimuli, monitored neural response and EM field. They referred to him as the asset. Leo, his sensitivity now a survival tool, felt their intentions clearly, Price's scalpel-sharp curiosity devoid of ethics. Vance's bureaucratic hunger for quantifiable results. Their signatures were metallic, cold. After they left, Leo found Elias repairing fence. "They're planning something," Leo stated. Elias didn't look up. Men who see a strange new tool only think of one use. That night, Leo pushed his awareness beyond the walls, past the fence. He felt sleeping minds of forest, simple hunger of a fox, patience of pines. Further, diffused low-grade anxiety of the nearest town. His range was vast. And then he felt it, a familiar dense knot of intellectual fervor and gnawing guilt, moving northward. Eris Thorne was coming. The fragile equilibrium was about to shatter. Thorne found Leo at the lakeshore at twilight, as if waiting. The two men stood, unspoken history between them. "I tried to stop it, Leo," Thorne began. "I know," Leo replied softly. "The guilt is a black stone in your chest. I feel its edges." Thorne recoiled slightly, the confirmation chilling. He spoke rapidly, outlining his theory. Leo was now a passive broadcaster, emitting a field that could resonate with and amplify latent emotional states. Isolated, effect was minimal. In a dense population, he could become a catalyst for mass emotion, panic, rage, euphoria. "Briggs will see it," Thorne insisted. "He'll see a strategic asset. A silent weapon for crowd control. They're calibrating you." Leo absorbed this. "What's your plan?" Thorne produced schematics. A counter-frequency. Spectra worked by resonant amplification. Find the frequency of your core stability, generate. A canceling field. A psychic noise cancellation coil. It won't cure you, but might give control, make you invisible to scanners. A desperate gamble built on stolen data. They would need to work in secret. Elias allowed use of his stone-walled toolshed. It was time they did not have. Nights in the toolshed were a strange inversion of Nevada. Leo sat willingly, electrodes on scalp, while Thorne sought the unbroken peace. The goal. Isolate Leo's neural pattern when accessing pure unassailable peace. Leo focused on the farm at dawn, chill, mist over pasture, rhythmic snort of horses, feeling of wooden fence post smooth and solid under palm. Agonizingly difficult. The memory was stained by prior violation. Thorne's frantic worry and Elias's mistrust buzzed at the edges, disrupting focus. Progress glacial. Meanwhile, manor atmosphere grew taut. Price and Vance always observing. Leo felt their suspicion like a searchlight grazing woods. One rainy night, frustration boiled. "It's not working." Leo snapped, mental shield slipping. "The stable me is buried. Nothing pure left." A wave of his anger and despair pulsed outward. In the manor, a glass cracked. Dr. Price jerked as sudden irrational fury flooded him. He looked toward the shed. Ambient sensors registered a spike. Price smiled. The asset was emotionally active. Perfect. He contacted Briggs. Passive observation insufficient. Recommend active field testing. Need empirical data on influence range and group effect. Propose live exercise. Authorization came before dawn. A convoy was summoned. Elias heard diesel engines first. He woke Thorne and Leo. From the toolshed window, they watched convoy arrive, trucks disgorging 24 soldiers in fatigues. Men were told they were part of a chemical agent detection drill. Their confusion and mild annoyance were a cloud of prickling yellow energy to Leo. Then Price emerged, directing setup of a portable unit, a sleek tripod-mounted emitter, a descendant of Spectra. Leo understood instantly. "They're going to agitate them," he whispered, horror dawning. "And use me as an amplifier. To see if I can focus the emotion, make them turn on each other." Thorne paled. "We have to run. Now." Elias provided the only route, an old storm drain from the lake, exiting beyond North Fence into State Forest. They grabbed Thorne's equipment and fled just as Price's voice crackled over loudspeaker, beginning the drill. As they reached Lakeshore, the first low hum of the inducer reached them. Leo felt it like a physical pull, a hook in his mind. Soldiers' collective mood began shifting, irritation curdling into aggression over trivial jostles. The nightmare was leaving the lab. With a final heave, they wrenched open the rusted grate and plunged into the dark cold pipe. The drain was a claustrophobic river of ink and sludge. They crawled for what felt like miles, Leo's mind assailed by escalating chaos above. Induced aggression was a sharp red signal seeking resonance in him. He felt soldiers fraying discipline, first sparks of real anger. Price's cold excitement was a bright clinical point. They emerged gasping into a rocky creek bed deep in untouched forest. Free of the fence, but not the experiment. Leo, soaked and shivering, could still feel the psychic stain of Willowbrook. And he felt the precise moment Price realized he was gone. Clinical excitement transformed into laser-focused hunting intent. The chase was now active. They ran, using forest as cover. Thorne navigated toward a safe house, remote cabin of a retired colleague. Leo became their early warning system. When he sensed search patterns, helicopters with mission focus, ground teams with dogged determination, they hit. Strain was immense. Leo was consuming emotional exhaust of the entire pursuit. By the second day, hollow-eyed, trembling. "I can't filter it," he confessed. "It's all coming in. I'm drowning." Thorne looked at battered equipment. "We need to try the damping field again. Give you a temporary shield. A bubble of quiet so we can move." They needed a place of profound natural stillness. They found the clearing as sun dipped low, ancient pines surrounding a moss-carpeted knoll where a spring bubbled from stone. Psychic noise faded to a whisper, replaced by vast slow vegetative consciousness of forest. A natural anechoic chamber for the soul. Thorne set up gear. Focus on core memory. The fence post at dawn. Not emotion, the sensation. The solidity. The cold grain of wood. Leo tried. Forest's quiet helped. For an hour, scanners showed only chaos. Then, a pattern emerged, steady deep alpha rhythm intertwined with subtle gamma waves, signature of focused awareness without tension. "That's it," Thorne whispered. "Hold that." He programmed emitter to generate its inverse. Powered it on. Leo felt change instantly. Constant pressure of external emotion receded, muted, as if stepped behind thick glass. He could still sense forest, Thorne's tension, but distant, softened. He took a deep shuddering breath. It works. But device was crude, battery finite. A respite, not solution. As they packed up, first search helicopter thudded over a distant ridge, its mechanical mind a glaring signature in Leo's newly quieted world. The bubble bought time, but the hunt was closing in. The damping field allowed stealthy movement, skirting the widening search grid. They reached forest's edge at dusk, overlooking a rural highway. The cabin was across the valley. They needed to cross open ground. As they waited for full dark, Leo, with his field active but thinning, felt a new probe. Not broad search, but a sharp familiar needle, Price, using refined mobile scanner, hunting for unique psychic residue of Spectra event. "He's close," Leo breathed. "He's listening for my signature." They had to move. They scrambled down, crossed highway in a dip, vanished into opposite tree line. Moments later, headlights appeared, black SUVs turning onto track they just left. The cabin was dark, unlocked. Inside, Thorne immediately plugged equipment into a robust generator. Leo sat by dead fireplace, portable battery dying. The bubble popped. World's emotional cacophony rushed back in, magnified. He felt deep loneliness of empty cabin, ancient patience of mountains, and with terrifying clarity, predatory focus of Price's team fanning out less than a mile away. "They're here," Leo said, voice hollow. Thorne worked frantically. "Just one more connection." Outside, a boot crunched gravel. A flashlight beam swept the window. They were surrounded. Price's voice, calm and amplified, pierced night. Leo. Dr. Thorne. This ends now. Come out. In cabin's dim light, Thorne and Leo shared a look. Quiet was no longer an option. The door gave way with a splintering crash. Price's team entered with tactical precision, finding Leo standing calmly in the room's center, hands raised. Thorne was hidden in a pantry, door ajar, his cabin-powered emitter aimed at Leo's back. "Where is Thorne?" Price demanded, scanner chirping. "Gone," Leo lied. "He left me. Your machine made me a monster," and he ran. Price's thin smile was contemptuous. Scanner chirped insistently near pantry. But as a soldier moved to open it, Price raised a hand. "Wait." He studied Leo. "You're emitting a fascinating damping field." "Thorne's work. It proves my point. You can be tuned. You are the missing component, a living transducer." He stepped closer. "The involuntary broadcast is inelegant. We can focus it. Direct it. With you as source, we won't need large clumsy inductors. Just a catalyst, and a target city." His monologue was cut by a rising whine. Cabin lights flickered. Thorne had thrown the switch, not for damping. He was using forest clearing data to amplify Leo's core frequency, the stable resonant note of the farm at dawn, beaming it back, creating a reinforcing feedback loop of pure self. The effect was not attack, but disorientation. A wave of profound alien calm radiated from Leo, tranquility so deep it felt like physical force. Price and his men, minds honed on aggression, staggered under its influence. Confusion replaced certainty. Orders died on lips. In that stunned lassitude, Leo moved. He didn't run. He walked, past disoriented soldiers, out the door, into woods with steady deliberate pace of a man checking his land. The amplified field moved with him, a 20-foot radius of enforced serenity. Soldiers on perimeter felt will to pursue melt away. Price, fighting effect with intellectual fury, screamed commands his men, mired in unnatural peace, could not obey. Leo kept walking. Thorne emerged from pantry, control in hand, keeping emitter dish trained on Leo's retreating form. He then slipped out back window and ran in a different direction, drawing some fractured pursuit. The plan was in tatters, but it created an opening. Leo walked through night, a beacon of stillness in hunted dark, his internal light slowly fading as distance from cabin's power source grew. By dawn, Leo was exhausted, the reinforcing field a fading echo. He found a rocky promontory overlooking a vast mist-filled valley. He collapsed, spent. The chase, constant psychic barrage, weight of what he had become, too much. He could not sustain this. He heard helicopter long before seeing it, baying of dogs drawing closer. The hunt was culminating. Then, a new voice rang from trees below, not Price's, but Colonel Briggs's. "Kowalski. Look at me." Leo looked down. Briggs stood amidst a tactical team, but held no rifle. He held a satellite phone with video screen. On it, Leo saw his mother's kitchen. His sister making coffee. Two men in dark suits stood politely in background. "They are under our protection," Briggs called, voice chillingly reasonable. "Their safety, comfort, contingent on your cooperation. End this. Now." It was the masterstroke. Targeted not the weapon, but the man. The farmer, brother, son. The core identity Thorne tried to amplify. Leo's fragile control shattered. A wave of pure despair, his own, undiluted, rippled from the outcrop. In trees below, a dog whimpered, cowered. Men felt sudden unaccountable grief. But this despair was different. It was human, complex, utterly vulnerable. In that moment of total defeat, Leo stopped trying to control anything. Stopped resisting the storm inside. He let it all flow out: fear, love, guilt, memory of sun on corn, taste of blood in Korean mud, smell of pine and desert ozone. An uncontrolled broadband broadcast of a complete broken human experience. It overloaded Price's scanner, designed to lock onto a single coherent psychic signature. The device shrieked feedback and died. Price, listening through headphones, cried out, clawing them off as cacophony of raw emotion flooded his senses. Below, chaos erupted of a different kind. Sheriff's department vehicles and park ranger trucks came bumping up the road. A hiker reported military activity. Local sheriff, a large man named Walsh, demanded explanations. Briggs, faced with exposure and mutating situation, made swift calculation. Ordered retreat. His men melted into forest toward extraction points. To Sheriff, Leo was just a distressed man on a cliff. They helped him down. As led to a vehicle, Briggs's gaze met his from across clearing, a promise this was an intermission, not an ending. But for now, Leo was in custody of the ordinary world. Part 18. The county hospital was a realm of mundane concerns. Leo was treated for exposure. Sheriff Walsh, shrewd, interviewed him. Leo gave halting partial truth: a military experiment, on the run, family threatened. He named Thorne. Walsh was skeptical but had seen black SUVs, professional retreat. He made calls hitting bureaucratic walls. Next morning, Federal Agent Coulson arrived with presidential executive order for transfer. Walsh, stubborn, refused without state-level notification. A standoff began. That afternoon, bruised heiress Thorne was brought in, arrested for trespassing. Walsh, sensing a puzzle, put them in a holding room together. "They have my family," Leo said immediately. Heiress nodded. "It's their leverage. But they've created friction. The locals, potential press, they can't just disappear us now." He leaned in, eyes alight. "Leo, on the cliff, you overloaded their tech. You broadcast everything. Not a single note, a symphony. Their machines are built for a single frequency. They can't process a symphony. That's your defense. Don't try to. Quiet. Be loudly human. Be complex. Be unreadable. A new paradigm. Control through lack of control. Identity as armor." Part 19. Coulson lost patience. Returned with full federal marshals and paperwork to override local authority. As led from hospital garage to a black van, Leo put Thorne's theory into practice. Stopped trying to shield himself. Opened his mind, not in targeted blast, but in steady streaming broadcast of his entire present experience. Cold garage air, smell of diesel, love for his sister, ache in knees, memory of a childhood birthday. A low-power broadband emission of being Leo Kowalski. Coulson, man of iron discipline, flinched as a wave of unrelated sensory impressions and emotions, not his own, washed over him. Taste of apple pie. Longing for a place never seen. Marshals shifted uneasily. The van ride was an ordeal of diffuse psychic discomfort for its occupants. By the time they reached remote airstrip where a cargo plane waited, Coulson's focus was frayed, his men unsettled. As marched across tarmac, Eris shouted to aircrew about kidnapping and Project SPECTRA. The name hung in air. Leo focused his broadcast, amplifying crew's own latent doubts about the vague mission. A loadmaster stepped back, refusing to take Eris's arm. "Sir, I need to confirm these orders." A standoff ensued on the tarmac. Into this stalemate roared Sheriff Walsh's car, followed by a news van. A reporter, Sarah Gable, emerged, camera rolling. Coulson's shadow operation was now in the light. Faced with public scene, mutinous aircrew, and rolling cameras, Coulson had one choice: tactical retreat. He relinquished custody to the sheriff, pending federal review. Back in county seat, the story began to grow. Gable interviewed them. Eris provided documents. Leo gave testimony. They held nothing back. The story broke nationally. Spectra, the Pentagon's secret mind war. Public outrage erupted. Congressional hearings were demanded. Leo and Eris were flown to Washington to testify before a closed Senate committee. In a secure room, facing skeptical faces, Leo told his story. One senator dismissed it as fantasy. Eris requested a demonstration. With permission, he used a tiny emitter on the senator. For 2 seconds, the man felt overwhelming unnatural boredom. The room fell silent. The technology was undeniably real. The hearings turned serious. Under pressure, the DoD admitted to historical research into non-lethal bioeffects and acknowledged Leo as a volunteer in a since-terminated study with unfortunate medical residuals. A settlement was offered, lifetime support, care, anonymity for his family, in exchange for silence. It was a gilded cage, but a cage with a key. Leo took it. The story faded. Spectra was buried again, under official silence. Part 21. Leo returned to the Midwest, but not to the family farm. He bought a secluded parcel nearby, a buffer of trees between him and the world. Eris continued his work independently, funded by opaque grants, refining damping technology, not for weapons, but for shielding. Leo's condition persisted, but he mastered it not through suppression, but through integration. He allowed the symphony of his soul, the noise of memory, sensation, emotion, to play continuously. He was a radio receiving all stations, and had learned to let the signal pass through him without clinging to any one broadcast. He visited his family often. Their love was a clear, strong frequency. He told them he had a neurological disorder from service. They accepted him. Years passed. Briggs retired. Price became a high-priced consultant in the murky world of private behavioral security. The official files on Spectra were sealed, but digitized, archived. A new generation of analysts studied them, not seeing a weapon of despair, but the blueprint for something else, a tool of profound connection. The principle of resonant amplification worked both ways. What if you could amplify empathy? Shared purpose. Leo Kowalski, in his quiet wood, unaware of his legacy, had become proof of concept. He had defeated a weapon of singular terror by embodying the complex, irreducible noise of humanity. In the end, the sleepless audience was not an enemy populace, but the very architects of control. And the story they heard was not of fear, but of a hum they could not tune out, the hum of a human spirit they could not frequency lock, and thus, could never truly own. The signal, once sent, could not be unsent. It was forever in the air. Part 22. 5 more years passed, each season a slow tide over Leo's quiet land. The damping device Eris perfected became a wrist-worn unit, a sleek silent guardian that let Leo choose his level of engagement with the world's emotional static. He used it sparingly, for he had grown accustomed to the symphony. He could now distinguish between the general hum of a town and the sharp cry of an individual crisis. Once, sensing a neighbor's despair so profound it cut through the trees, he walked over with a pot of stew and sat in silent solidarity on the porch until the man finally wept. No words were needed. Leo had learned to be a conduit for healing, a passive reflector of peace. Eris visited annually, his own guilt softened by time and purpose. They never spoke of Nevada, but its shadow lay between them, a dark foundation upon which an unexpected peace had been built. The government checks arrived without fail. His family thrived, safe in their anonymity. Leo believed the story was over, that he had been filed away as a closed case. He was wrong. In a think tank in Northern Virginia, a young data scientist named Chloe Renfrew, with top-level clearances and a mind that saw patterns in chaos, stumbled upon the digitized Spectra archives. She wasn't interested in weaponization. Her focus was neural harmony, collective problem solving. As she parsed the data, her eyes widened not at the horror, but at the anomaly labeled Subject K, post-event resonance. The graphs showed something impossible, a brain in persistent, stable coherence while broadcasting a field of complex emotional information. The weapon had failed, but the subject had succeeded. He had achieved synthesis. Renfrew began a new file, not under weapons research, but under consciousness evolution. The signal, dormant in the archives, had found a new receiver. The story was entering a new chapter, and Leo, unaware, remained its living heart. Part 23. Chloe Renfrew's report was a quiet detonation in a very small classified pond. Titled, Project Synthesis, From Coercive Resonance to Collaborative Coherence, it argued that Subject K represented an evolutionary leap. A human neural network naturally attuned to emotional and cognitive undercurrents of his environment, capable of both receiving and harmonizing those signals. The failed weapon was a crude precursor to a potential tool for profound human interconnection. Her superiors were skeptical, but data was compelling. They authorized discrete non-invasive observation. Satellite imagery, public records, signals intelligence painted an updated picture of Leo Kowalski. They saw a man living in deliberate isolation, yet whose rare forays into town coincided with anecdotal reports of eased tensions, averted bar fights, resolved disputes, pervasive unremarkable calm. To Chloe, these were data points confirming her thesis. She proposed first contact, ethical, transparent, consensual. Her request was denied. Risk of reawakening that asset was deemed too great. But Chloe was a child of the information age, she believed in the power of a signal sent directly. Using secure anonymized channels, she began drafting a letter. Not from the government, but from one scientist to another subject of the same terrible experiment. She would tell him what he had become in their eyes, and ask him what he believed he was. The message was encoded, the path untraceable, the intent a beam of light aimed at a distant quiet star. Part 24. The letter arrived in Leo's post office box, a plain envelope among farm supply catalogs. The return address was a dead drop. The message inside was printed on non-traceable paper, its language precise, scientific, yet strangely reverent. It spoke of Spectra not as his tormentor, but as the inadvertent midwife of a new state of being. It described his broadcast not as a curse, but as a low-frequency hymn of human complexity. It asked a single question: do you perceive your condition as an affliction, or as a sense? Leo read it by his kitchen window, the damping bracelet on his wrist humming softly. He felt no threat from the words, only a profound unsettling curiosity. For the first time, someone was speaking about what he was without fear or a desire to use it. They were asking him what it meant. He didn't answer that day, or the next. He carried the letter into his woods, its presence a new weight in his pocket. He sat on a familiar log and let his awareness expand. He felt the push-pull of life around him, the strife, the joy, the quiet desperation, the bursts of love. Was it an affliction? Yes, it had been agony. Was it a sense? Yes, as much as sight or hearing. It was a sense that showed him the invisible architecture of feeling that held the world together, and sometimes threatened to tear it apart. He was not a weapon. He was a witness. And now, someone was witnessing him. That night, he took out a pen and a single sheet of paper. He wrote only 3 sentences: it is both. A wound that became an ear. What do you hear? He mailed it the next morning, not knowing if it would ever arrive, or who would read it. The act itself was the point. He had sent a signal back. Weeks passed with no reply. Leo's life resumed its quiet rhythm, but the letter had altered its frequency. He found himself listening more intently, not just to emotional noise, but for a specific signal, a return ping on the strange new channel that had opened. He sensed nothing. Perhaps it had been a test that ended. Then, on an overcast Tuesday, as he stacked firewood, a car he didn't recognize came slowly up his long gravel drive. A modest sedan, rental-plated. A woman in her 30s, with intelligent eyes and posture blending academic focus with visible anxiety, stepped out. Leo felt her emotional signature before she spoke, potent mix of fierce curiosity, ethical trepidation, deep humming awe. She carried no official threat, only a worn leather satchel. "Mr. Kowalski," she said, keeping distance by the car. "My name is Chloe Renfrew. I sent the letter." Leo set wood down slowly, damping bracelet set to minimum. Her aura was clear, unclouded by deception. "You're from them," he stated. "I'm from the data," she corrected softly. "I work for them, but I came here for me. And for the truth. May I speak with you?" He studied her, this new player on his long quiet stage. Her intent was a clean sharp line, a seeker, not a hunter. He nodded toward the porch. "You can speak. I'll listen." It was all the invitation she needed. She approached, not as an official, but as a pilgrim to a living archive. The conversation began on that porch, lasting through afternoon, stretching into twilight where first stars appeared, mirrors to new connections being forged in dimming light below. Part 26. Chloe spoke of patterns in noise, of quantum biology theories where consciousness might have a field effect, of Spectra's brutal machinery accidentally tapping into a fundamental human capacity. She showed him graphs of his own brain activity from archives, side by side with her models of neural coherence. "You're not broadcasting chaos," she said, voice earnest. "You're broadcasting integration. Your brain has found a way to hold multiple conflicting emotional and sensory inputs in a stable state. That's unprecedented." Leo listened, technical terms washing over him, but core truth resonated. It named what he had slowly painfully learned, to hold the storm without becoming it. "So what now?" he asked, voice gravel. "Do you want to study me? Recreate it?" Chloe shook head vehemently. "No. Replication was Spectra's goal. I'm interested in understanding. Your existence proves a potentiality. My question is, are you alone?" The implication hung in air. Were there others? Had the machine's feedback, or other experiments, created similar beings? Was he a singular accident, or the first visible peak of a hidden range? Leo had never considered it. His entire focus had been managing his own reality. The thought that there might be others living with this symphony, isolated and terrified as he once was, struck him with profound new responsibility. The purpose that had been slowly growing within him, to be a silent anchor, suddenly crystallized. He wasn't just a witness. He might be a guide. Part 27. The revelation settled between them like dust motes in porch light. Others. The concept was both terror and solace. Leo had spent decades believing himself a unique broken artifact. The possibility he was not alone was a seismic shift in his internal geography. Chloe watched understanding transform his face, guarded tension softening into pensive heavy resolve. "How would we even find them?" he asked, the "we" hanging significant in quiet air. Chloe opened satchel, withdrawing a thin tablet. She showed him a global map dotted with faint pulsing markers. "Anomalous electromagnetic signatures," she explained. "Subtle persistent field disturbances correlating with no known technology. Most dismissed as geological or instrument error. But a handful have weak correlations to old Cold War research outposts, or regions where individuals report persistent unexplained atmospherics, feelings of being watched, sudden overwhelming emotion, shared dreams." She zoomed in on a marker in Scandinavian North, another in Australian Outback, a third in a dense quarter of Mumbai. "They're whispers. But your data gives us a filter. A signature to seek." Leo stared at the map, a chart of potential solitude. He thought of early years, the drowning panic. No one should endure that alone. "We have to be careful," he said, voice low. "The people who made me, they'll be looking for same signals. Not to help. To collect." Chloe nodded, expression grim. "I know. This is off the books. My access limited, time borrowed. We would have to move quietly. Not as an organization, but as a search party." She looked at him, the question unspoken. Would he leave his hard-won peace to venture back into that world, not as prey, but as a hunter of hope? The woods around his home sighed in wind. He thought of the fence post at dawn, solid and unmoving. But a fence also defines a space to be protected. He had protected himself long enough. It was time to protect others like him. He met her gaze and gave a single slow nod. The search began. Part 28. Preparations were meticulous, conducted in shadowed space between Leo's woods and Chloe's discreetly rerouted research grants. Using her access, she constructed a portable detector, sleek unit no larger than a book, tuned to the unique harmonic fingerprint of Leo's own broadcast field. It could differentiate between natural EM noise and the subtle coherent resonance they sought. Leo, meanwhile, prepared himself. He practiced modulating his own field, using techniques born of long meditation, to emit a simple pulsing beacon of calm, a friendly signal meant not to overwhelm, but to gently announce, "I am here," to any sensitive enough to perceive it. Their first target was the Scandinavian marker, linked to a decommissioned Swedish acoustic research station near Arctic Circle. The journey was long, a series of planes and trains into a landscape of endless pines and stark white silence. As they trekked final miles on snowshoes, the detector remained quiet. Leo felt nothing but vast clean cold and primordial patience of tundra. They found station ruins, iced over and skeletal. Disappointment settled cold and heavy. But as they turned to leave, Leo paused. He lowered mental shields completely, sending out a wide silent query, not a command, but a question woven from memory and empathy. "Alone?" For a moment, nothing. Then, from deep woods east of ruins, a tremor. Not in air, but in fabric of feeling itself, a faint exhausted profoundly lonely echo, like a reflection in a frozen lake. It was raw, unformed, pulsing with a pain he remembered all too well. It was not a signal of control or weaponry. It was the cry of a lost one. Leo's eyes met Chloe's. The detector in her hand gave a soft confirming chirp, its needle trembling. They were not alone. The story was no longer just his. It was a chorus, waiting to be heard. The hunt for broken weapons was over. The search for lost people had truly begun. And in that frozen silence, under pale Arctic sun, Leo Kowalski finally understood his purpose. He was not a failed experiment. He was a shepherd, and he had just heard the first faint bleat of another lost sheep in the wilderness of human potential. The signal was answered. The echo was a fragile thread in the frozen air. Leo motioned for silence, not with his hand but with a sudden stillness that Chloe felt more than saw. He closed his eyes, filtering out the wind's keen, the crunch of snow underfoot, the electric hum of their equipment. He focused on that thread, thin, frayed, resonating with a frequency of pure isolation. It wasn't a broadcast like his, it was a leak, a slow bleed of a psyche under immense, uncomprehending strain. He shaped his own signal into the simplest form he could, an image of warm light through a window at dusk, the feeling of a blanket's weight, the silent understanding of company. He sent it gently along the thread, a drop of color in a monochrome world. For a long moment, nothing. Then, a shift. The echo didn't strengthen, but its chaotic shimmer steadied, as if a hand had been placed on a trembling shoulder. A direction became clear. East, deeper into old-growth forest where pines grew thick as cathedral pillars. They followed. The detector's chirps grew more frequent. After an hour, they found a small partially collapsed trapper's cabin. Smoke, thin and gray, curled from a makeshift chimney pipe. Leo approached slowly, Chloe hanging back. He sent another pulse, the warm light image, and added a sensation, the smell of brewing coffee. The cabin door creaked open an inch. A face appeared in the shadow. Pale, gaunt, eyes wide with a fear that was decades old. Leo felt the man's emotional field like a shattered mirror, each shard reflecting a different fragment of trapped terror. But one shard, small and bright, reflected back the warm light Leo had sent. It was enough. Leo spoke, his voice soft as the falling snow. My name is Leo. I was in a machine, too. I found a way to live with the noise. The door opened wider. His name was Emil. He had been a subject in a Swedish counterpart to Spectra, a project focused on auditory hallucination and directional sound weaponry. His experiment had ended abruptly during a political purge, the lab abandoned, but the damage was done. He heard thoughts as sounds, angry shouts, weeping, manic laughter, with no filter or control. He had fled here 30 years ago, a hermit sustained by trapping and a profound terror of human company. Leo and Chloe stayed a week in a nearby shelter. Leo spent hours with Emil, not talking much, but sitting in shared silence, modeling the technique of allowing the noise to flow through without grasping any one thread. He showed Emil the damping bracelet, explaining its principle. Emil, an engineer before his ordeal, understood immediately. His trembling began to lessen. On the 5th day, Emil, for the first time, initiated contact. A focused projection of the sound of wind through pine needles, clean and simple and beautiful. It was his first controlled broadcast. It was a declaration of hope. When they left, Chloe had arranged for discreet supplies to be delivered. Emil had Leo's frequency now, a steady beacon of calm in the wilderness. He was no longer alone. The detector, analyzing Emil's stabilized field, had refined its search parameters. The Mumbai signal was next. It pulsed from within the dense emotional cacophony of the city, a strange note of perfect, synthetic calm, a signature worryingly different from Emil's shattered noise or Leo's integrated symphony. Mumbai was an assault. The tsunami of emotion, hope, despair, ambition, love, fury, was overwhelming, even for Leo with his bracelet at maximum damping. The signal they sought was a chilling anomaly, a perfect, unwavering sphere of neutral effect in the bustling Kamathipura district. It felt less human and more like a psychic void. They traced it to a modest apartment above a tailor's shop. The occupant was a young woman named Priya. She worked data entry, lived alone, and was described by neighbors as very quiet, very peaceful. When she opened the door, Leo felt nothing. Not a damping, but an absence, as if standing before a photograph of a person. Her smile was pleasant, her eyes empty. She invited them in. Chloe, using a pretext, asked about headaches or strange dreams. Priya spoke in a monotone. I have no dreams. I am efficient. I am at peace. It was then Leo noticed the faint, almost invisible scar behind her ear. He recognized the pattern from Spectra schematics, a neural shunt. Someone hadn't just experimented on her, they had performed a crude lobotomy on her psychic faculty, turning a potential broadcaster into a dead zone. A human firewall. This wasn't a lost soul to save, it was a warning. The weaponizers weren't just hunting for assets. They were creating countermeasures. They knew about people like Leo, and they were learning to negate them. Priya's perfect calm was the most horrifying thing Leo had ever felt. They left quietly. The search had just become a different kind of war. The final marker was in the Australian outback. This signal was the strongest yet, but also the most erratic, bursts of immense, joyful connection followed by troughs of catatonic withdrawal. It led them to an Aboriginal community, where they were greeted with wary respect. The elder, a woman named Nala, knew why they had come. You seek the singer, she said. Her name was Kaya. As a child, she had fallen into a sacred spring during a fever dream. When she emerged, She could feel the song of the land, the memories in the rocks, the stories in the wind. She was her people's living historian, a bridge to the dreaming. But the white fella's noise from distant cities had begun to flood her, causing the seizures and withdrawals. Leo met Kaya. Her field was not broken or weaponized, it was ancient, vast, and intrinsically tied to place. She was what he might have been in a different world. Leo didn't need to teach her control. He learned from her. She showed him how to ground his awareness in the specific memory of a place, to use the land as a stabilizer. In exchange, he and Chloe gifted her a specially designed damping unit, tuned to filter the invasive modern psychic static while preserving her connection to her country's song. It was a partnership, not a rescue. As they prepared to leave, Nala took Leo's hand. "You carry a wound that walks," she said. "But you are making it a path for others. The song is changing, but it does not end." Leo understood. His purpose was clear. He was not a shepherd leading sheep to a pen. He was a pathfinder, connecting isolated islands of human experience in a sea of noise. He would find the others, the broken and the hidden, and help them build their own bridges. The signal from Nevada had not been an ending. It was an invitation to a larger conversation. And he would spend the rest of his life answering it, one quiet connection at a time, until the lonely frequencies of the world found their harmony.